Welcome to another webinar from Turk. Today we will talk about RFID solutions for intralogistics, and our expert, which we have here, is Henrik Schnabel.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Henrik is working in product management of RFID systems. My name is Jörg Tauert. I'm a technical trainer at Turk, and I try to keep an eye on your chat questions and keep everything up and running. Okay, Henrik, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Jörg. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar. Thanks for your time. We have got some interesting, tough stuff to discuss, and I'd like to show you some items regarding RFID solutions for intralogistics. So, as Jörg mentioned, I'm part of the product management for RFID, and my product portfolio is all about UHF RFID. So I'm working with the technology that is made for reading higher distances, so up to a few meters and multiple tags at once. And this UHF RFID as a far field identification system is a very good technology for intralogistic processes and all the logistic stuff that we have in different companies. So in this webinar, we have two main parts. The first one is to talk about RFID in general, what the advantage of RFID is in these kind of processes. And the second step is about detailed RFID solutions. And then we talk about how to implement RFID in these kind of processes. So then I assume let's start. So intralogistic processes, what do I mean? So when I talk about intralogistic processes, then I mean every or all processes where you have access on, meaning that there are no other companies or third-party companies involved. We just talk about processes where you have 100% access to and where you can decide how to design and how to make the process work. So we are going through a typical supply chain that you may have in your company as well, and this is where I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into. So I've brought some overview of what a typical structure of a company that is producing some goods and items typically look like. So before I go into this, I quickly like to explain you why there is a need of adding RFID to these kind of processes. So as you know that whole supply chains of companies and global players and structures are getting more and more important, because it's all about efficiency, it's all about transparency of the supply chain, and in the end it is about saving time and saving costs. So when you make your processes visible, then you can analyze the processes and see where there is some space left or some time left that you can save in order to fasten or to speed up your processes. And that's why it's important to talk about RFID that can be included in this kind of processes, because it makes things visible.
So we would say that RFID opens the view on parts where you can do optimization in your process.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So RFID
next to the standard that you can identify the stuff and tell where it is. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. So RFID makes it visible where everything is at what time and how long it stayed at a certain point. That's the main aspect of RFID. And this enables lots of stuff that I'd like to show you now. Mm-hmm. In the first steps, it often starts with some material. So at a certain point, when you are working in a company that is producing some goods, then you will definitely receive some material. It can be a raw material packed in bags. It can be some supply products, which are maybe some PCB or electronic stuff. So it doesn't matter what kind of material, but somewhere in your production line, something is coming to your company. And then this stuff and this material is maybe stored in the first and big warehouse in your company, and there you're storing lots of stuff, and then you have a big inventory of items, which you then are using in the next step in the production. And you have maybe different production lines, different kind of products that you make, and you need different materials and items for each product. And in the end, maybe you have a finished product, and this product is then again stored in some kind of stocks. And this can be a stock near to the production line, but it can also be a remote stock that is a few kilometers or away or in a complete other city. And then in the end, the last point is the shipment to some end customer or to some other distributor, and then you are maybe using some other companies that are responsible for the transport. So I think this is a typical supply chain for intralogistic applications. And in some of these, I'd like to go a little bit more in detail to tell you how RFID can have a good impact on optimizing this kind of processes. The first one is material consumption. So we are again starting at a point where we are receiving some goods. And then you have two options. The first one is maybe you are lucky and your supplier is already tagging some items. Then it's possible to use this existing information and to use the existing tags for your own process. Or the second option is that the items are not tagged and you're completely free to add tags to the items and define what kind of information should be stored on these tags. In case you are already receiving some items that are tagged, then it can be that the information are following a specific standard. So we see that there are some kind of standard in automotive industry, for instance, where you have a defined use of the memory and there are predefined information that are on these tags. Then you can use this one, or in case you are starting on a low level and starting to add tags by yourself, then you are free to completely add information like you want. Maybe the supplier of the item can be stored. For instance, when you have a good or an item that are delivered by 3 different suppliers, you can add the information which supplier exactly delivered the items. You can store batch codes if you have them. You can store the time when it arrived. And there are lots of options, and you can define what kind of information you'd like to store on these tags.
Yeah, maybe we can look at an example. I think the idea that you get incoming goods from different suppliers, and maybe you later have a reclamation or something like this, and then you will be able to find out where did the incoming product come from.
Exactly.
And to really get this rid of this problem and find out from whom did it come. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you want to go even one step further, so let's quickly hop over this part number 2 and go to number 3. When you have RFID accessible in your production line, then you can even find out all the items where this specific bad batch went into. So then you are able to call back a specific number of products, and without RFID and without tracking these batch codes, you are maybe forced to call back hundreds or thousands of products because you cannot define or cannot find out in what kind of products these specific batches were used.
If each component is tagged.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely the requirement. Yeah.
Yeah, you talked about also the optimization. And when you look, for instance, at the example, you have 2 robots, 2 lines doing something with the material. Yeah, and maybe you find out that one line is always empty and the robot is waiting for incoming stuff. Yeah, could RFID help me there in this problem?
So what the production line can do is to automatically create some material lists. So in case it is empty or it's waiting for some material, it automatically can say to the workers or to the system that we have some empty slots or some empty space, and I have some resources left to produce something, and then an automatic a list can be created automatically. And when we have RFID attached to the items, the information that the system can give you is where in the stock, for instance, is something stored. So it can give you a list of what is exactly needed and where it is in the stock. So you can not only make the production line more efficient, but also the warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And for the warehouse, for instance, we can add RFID to the warehouse as well, and then it would be possible to store the items in the warehouse. And while it is placed in the warehouse, then the system can know where exactly it is placed. So when you have, for instance, some of the tags attached to a warehouse, to the specific place in the warehouse, and you are putting a pallet, for instance, in the warehouse, then you can scan the tags on the pallet, scan the tags on the place of the warehouse, and then the system knows, okay, the certain amount of items is exactly stored on this specific place in the warehouse. And this, of course, makes your way to get the items more efficiency, because you know exactly where it is. Your forklift driver, for instance, knows the fastest way to the warehouse, or the other way around. The warehouse can sort the items intelligent. So if the warehouse then knows, okay, I always need an item 1 or item 2 for each product, then I can store it directly at the beginning in the warehouse, because then the forklift driver just needs to drive a very short way to get these items. And if we are using an item very often that is stored at the end of the warehouse, then we have unnecessary long ways to get the items from stock. And so here it definitely makes, again, things visible. Where is some item in the warehouse? How big is my inventory? How much items do I have left on inventory? And based on the RFID in the production, I can forecast how many items I need in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks or months. And then your warehouse can automatically reorder items that will get empty soon. So the benefit is clearly that we have a better efficiency of the warehouse and the production. We can check during the production if I have some item that is really the right one for an application, because I think there is a worst case scenario when you are adding some items into your product that doesn't belong there, and then in the end you get a product that is faulty, that is not built correctly, and then you need to repair them or something like this, and then you can easily check, did I use the right items or material or not? So full transparency of warehouse and production. Second thing is the RTI tracking and RTI pool management. And RTI means returnable transport item. So we can talk about pallets or boxes that you are using in your production. And maybe you have a pallet where you are storing some goods and items, and this pallet is going through every step of the production line, including the warehouse in the end. Or maybe you are sending these pallets to your customer. He is removing the stuff from the pallet and should send the pallets back to you. And RFID here enables, again, a lot of transparency, because when you are tagging each pallet or each box, you know exactly where each pallet is at what time. And this, of course, helps you that you don't lose RTIs over time, because we often have customers who are using boxes and pallets, and every year they are losing a huge amount of these boxes, and they need to buy new boxes and pallets every year because they got lost in their own production plan, they got lost at the customer side. And sorry, this is the picture.
I just wanted to say,
yeah, sorry.
Have the picture with it.
Yeah, sorry, I was looking at the wrong display. So
Okay.
you have here, and number one, you have your pool of RTIs. In this case, we have boxes, and based on this pool, then you are adding these boxes to your production line to store items in it or to store products on it. And then, as I mentioned, one example is that these RTI elements or RTI
boxes or whatever,
will go to your customer or will go to your production line. So at some point you are shipping them out, you're using them on other sites and production plants, and then maybe you are lucky and you get them back. And in case you are not getting them back, you can make some kind of inventory by the end of the year, and you definitely know where these RTI items go to. And then you can see, okay, I have a customer who still have 100 of my pallets, or let's say 1,000 of my boxes. And you can say to him, okay, please send me them back. And in case you cannot find them, please buy me new ones.
We've got one question. I think for RTIs, it's relatively clear because an RTI is worth some euros, and so it's worth to have a tag on it. But
Exactly.
if you look at some products, where would you estimate the benchmark that it's worth to tag each component of a product? I think we have to look from two times on it. First of all, we have to look at the component which comes into the product, and second is the value of the finished product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, in the end, it's a calculation of the return of invest. So when, for instance, you have a very cheap box that costs me maybe, I don't know, €1, then of course it's a calculation. When a label in high volume costs me, let's say 10 to 15 cents, then I have 10 to 15% more costs to work with a pallet, and it depends on how many pallets you are losing for each year. If you're just losing, let's say, 100, 500 pallets, I think it's not as bad as losing thousands of pallets each year. This totally depends on the problem that you have. So a little bit difficult to answer this question because it simply depends.
Well, when we for instance, look at our electronic production, in our electronic devices, we have, of course, a lot of components on it. We have transistors on it, and we have resistors on it, and the price of this is nothing. Of the resistor product, of course, something different. And we do not tag every problem, but we know into which charge which product has come, and so this is which makes the information important and valuable.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's you need to get it to match the end part and the components go inside. It's really hard. Yes, we cannot tell you a rule for this. I need to calculate. And if you don't have any reclamations or so, then it's not needed, more or less.
Yeah, exactly. But that's why we are offering to our customers a kind of consulting service that we are coming to you and we have a detailed view on your process, and then we can evaluate, okay, if it makes sense to RFID or not, and if it makes sense, how detailed should the information be and what should be tagged and where are some savings of the process.
Yeah.
So this is part of our delivering RFID turnkey solutions. In the first step, it always starts with the discussion and with understanding the process. So let's go back to our RTI pool. So at a point when the RTI items are coming back, then of course I will scan and identify them as soon as they are arriving. And then in case you are having some food in the boxes or some chemical stuff, then you can, for instance, wash them. And if you have some boxes that are maybe made for 1,000 cycles of washing, then of course your system can automatically count the number of wash cycles and then automatically can remove boxes from the pool, because when they arrive 1,000 washing cycles, maybe they are broken or don't have enough quality to use them again, and then the system can automatically remove them from the RTI pool. So it's all about, again, transparency, seeing how big the pool of RTI tools is, how the life cycles of RTI items are, and in case you're losing them, you know where each RTI can be found or where it got lost. The last process I'd like to show you is the shipment verification. And in this case, we have, for instance, an order from a customer, and our system is creating a picking list, maybe for a forklift driver or for other workers. And on these picking list, you have the information not only what should be sent to the customer, but where it is in our stock. So again, we have a very efficient way of getting the items out of the stock, pack them on the pallet, and when they are all on the pallet, we have the access to scan them all at once, and then you can be sure that you did not forget any items, and that you can ship them completely and 100% completely to the customer. So we have a verification, especially when we are delivering the pallets to the truck or to some other vehicles. Then we can automatically scan them while we are loading the pallet into the truck, and we get some visual feedback if this was the right order for the right truck, or if it was the wrong order and we are loading a wrong pallet to a truck. So this is the verification that we can do with RFID automatically, and of course we have a right and a complete shipment that is going to the customer. And then of course it saves you the time of some faulty deliveries, because when your customer is calling you and saying, oh, we got some wrong items or some items is missing, you have the work to find out what went wrong and to send again some items to the customer. And here again, you can save time, you can save costs, and of course you don't get any claims from your customer that something went wrong. And this results in higher customer satisfaction, of course.
Yeah.
So these are three very typical processes in intralogistic processes, applications, and I'm pretty sure that you have at least one of them in your company, and maybe have some problems that are quite close to the ones that I presented you.
So, okay, you said our process in selling at the end maybe an RFID solution is that, first of all, somebody will come over and do have a look on the application and talk with you. So the first contact, of course, is the sales guy, which is looking for you, and so that's your first contact. And then we have a company inside the company, which is called Turk Wieland, and so they're doing nothing else but checking the applications and building up a complete solution as you want it.
Exactly.
So this is the way it works.
Exactly. So talking about products is always taking place in the end, like for this webinar. So when we are talking about solutions now, we have two ways to integrate UHF RFID in your processes, and both of them have the advantage that they can be implemented in existing processes. So when you are deciding to add RFID to your process, you don't need to calculate extra time for identifying or an extra station where you need to identify the items. You can easily add them to existing infrastructure or processes. And here we have two options. The first one is what we call the RFID gate, and the other one is the RFID forklift solution. The RFID gate is, for instance, something that can look like this. So we have here some metal frame that is close to a gate. That's why we call it an RFID gate. And now you can see that we have a reader placed on this gate with different antennas. And this is a stationary read point. So every time somebody is moving some goods and items through this gate, it is automatically identified, and the information that have been read were sent to an upper database system. And here you can see when a product is moving from process step 1 to process step 2. For instance, from the warehouse to the production. And as soon as the item is driving through this gate, then your system knows, okay, I've seen some items that are moving from the warehouse to the production. And this is how you make the information where something is visible. And in case you have lots of gates and different locations, and there are defined ways of how goods are being moved through your production site, then this is the best option that you can include, because you are not adding any additional read point. You can add them to existing streets, ways, or gates. And this is a very good solution to identify a huge amount of tags at a time. Because you have a reader with external antennas, you have a big field that covers a huge room and a huge huge objects and huge pallets, for instance. And this is a very good way to identify lots of tags at one time. You can use them too in case you don't have any forklifts where you can attach RFID. So when you have smaller vehicles to move something, maybe it's some small how can I say, Jörg, how can we
I don't know the English word, but it's some small things where you can, and it goes up and I don't know the English word. In Germany we call it ant.
Yes, exactly. So some smaller vehicles where that are not always have a separate engine, but they are being moved by hand of a worker or something like this. And when you don't have a forklift, then you can use gates very, very easily.
Yeah, we have a question on the UHF field, which we have here, and on the amount of text which can be read on in one time at once. Can you specify this a little bit more in detail? How the procedure is, and what is the limiting factor?
Mm-hmm. So there are two things to consider. So the first one is from technical point of view. So how RFID works, there is, let's say, not really a limit, because you have a standardized way of communicating with multiple tags in a time, but the physical limit, I think, is the more important one. So it is, or as soon as you attach some tags to boxes and put these boxes together on the pallet, then the read or the performance of the tags is being reduced, and especially when some metal is involved and when some environmental things are being added. For instance, when you have lots of metal around this station. So, for instance, when you have some stores here, some elements very close to the read point, then you have reflections of the field, and some things have bad influence on this RF field. Then, of course, it's hard to read tags. So, there is no number like you can read 1,000 tags per second. So even if it is technically possible, then your physical influences are not reaching this kind of amount of tags. So I think for this kind of situation, it is likely that you're reading 20 or 30 tags at a time. Because when you have more tags and lots of items, your tags are getting smaller, and as soon as they are smaller, the performance is not as good. And then especially when you have tags here in of this pallet, then at a point you're physically not able to read them. Because
can you give some examples? If I look at this racing forklift here, which has obviously a high speed, and what is a typical number? Let's say not talk about thousands, but I think if I count here, I have 3, 6 by, so it's 3 by 3 or something, so 9, maybe 30,
9 by 3,
or something.
Exactly, and this is a typical number. Let's say 20 to 50, I would say, but 50 is quite high. But
another question: whether we are using RFID at Turk? Yes, we do. First of all, for the coffee. Second one is for getting into the building, and we have, of course, just joking. We have in our production we are using RFID to identify products and to control a soldering robot, for instance, and we're using it in commissioning in our warehouse, of course. Yeah. Then we have another question. If the pallet is built with several small tagged boxes filled with metal parts, so the box and inside we have metal.
Yeah.
The box is not metal, I guess. The boxes that are inside can be read as well as the boxes that are in the outside of the pallet.
No, definitely not. You will get troubles because you cannot read through metal. That's physically impossible. So when you want to identify metal parts, then you are limited because it's not possible. It's like
it takes away the energy. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So then you need to change maybe the way of adding items to the pallet, that you don't add too much items to the pallet. So these are very, very detailed and it's a very concrete question. Yeah.
Okay. It's always worth to have a look on it and try to find out, and maybe have to go back from a big number to a smaller number. Then it's maybe possible.
Yeah. So the most important thing is that UHF RFID is not a plug-and-play technology. So it's not working in a way that you add tags to some items and then add an RFID gate and think that it will work. It won't work. And this is why we are offering this consulting service, because then you can be sure we are testing and evaluating each and every read point to find the best working combination of readers and tags and read points.
No. In this application, which we see here with the forklift, I love this racing forklift. So again, where we have incoming goods, and they are not tagged yet. How difficult is tagging? So
you can imagine that there are, for instance, printers available. So they are capable of printing directly on the text, but not printing something with color on the tag, but also the electronic information directly into the tag. So it's very easy to get some devices that can read, let's say, an increasing information on each tag, and there are even robots for conveyor belt applications that are attaching labels directly to some boxes or products. So there are lots of ways to do it. And but it's also possible to buy already tags that have predefined information, that you don't need to buy an extra RFID printer. Depends on the use case.
I didn't know they were also called RFID printers. Okay.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Strange and new. Okay. These were the questions up to now. Please go ahead.
Yeah, then we can talk about RFID forklifts. And then you can see here, for instance, it's a bigger forklift, but the idea is the same when having a typical forklift. You can see here the antenna attached on the forklift. And this antenna is reading these kind of bags while they are being moved through the production plant. And this is, we can say this is a mobile reading station. So you don't have gate applications where you have a fixed reader. Here you have the reader and the antenna on each forklift. And the the flexibility you have here is, of course, much higher, because when you have, for instance, an existing number of forklifts in your production site, then you can think about adding RFID to the forklift instead of adding stationary gates. So when you're using high amount of forklifts, then it may be easier to add RFID to each forklift than building up an RFID gate. And of course, you are reading the items in front of the forklift every time, because when you're using a gate, then you have just one station where you are reading the text, and the system is then seeing this switching or this change from one process to another one. And here you have way more flexibility and a higher detailed information, because the truck here is driving through your production plant, maybe even outside spaces where you have huge places and huge stores. And then when you are adding tags, for instance, to the floor, and you add an antenna to the lower side of the forklift, then you can easily locate your tags on the production plant. Or even your forklift has some built-in GPS, and then your system is able to combine the RFID information of the forklift with the GPS signal, and then you have a very good localization of the tag. If you need this high level of details, you can do it with the forklift.
Yeah, when I look at this picture, it is inside a hall, so GPS would not work. What would be the solution then?
Exactly. Then the solution would be to add several tags placed on the bottom in the concrete of the floor, for instance.
Okay. And then the reader is also looking to another reader or antenna. Could this be an application? We have a question here in a cold storage for food, for instance.
Yeah, sure. So we definitely need to consider the temperature, because we have operation temperature for tags and readers as well, but basically this is an option too. For instance, when you have some cold stores or some freezing warehouses, then you have discussions regarding when something is freezing, then it can be that tags that have adhesive on the back may fall off, because then you have some humidity and it's freezing and then it's warming up again. And then it gets complicated, but of course, in general, it's working, and this could be a solution for freezing warehouses as well.
Okay. We've got another question, more about the UHF, which we also have here. We're also talking about UHF. So, what are the advantages from UHF to existing very cheap barcode systems?
Okay.
Despite of bulk scanning.
Yeah. Okay. Let me quickly finish this slide with the last two points, because one of the big differences is that when you are reading something on a forklift, then the number of tags that you can identify is much lower, because you have just one or two antennas and you have a very small place in front of the reader that you can cover, and this is something that you should know. There's limited space, limited physical space there. Yeah. Exactly. Okay. So then you have questions regarding UHF. The question was...
if I look at barcode systems, where you have the need to have the optical view. Yeah, and exactly. So in comparison with UHF, so if you don't have, but not bulk scanning.
Okay, so one of the first very important advantages is, of course, that you can scan multiple items at once. So with barcode, you can just scan them individually and step by step. So there's no option to read 5 barcodes as one. That's the first big advantage. The second one is the amount of data you can store. Of course, when you have a QR code and other 2-dimensional, 3-dimensional codes, you can store more information, but the typical 2-dimensional barcode is limited to the amount of information you can store on. And when you are working in the production line, you often have some dirt, you have some dust, and you have other industrial components. And as soon as they lay on the barcode label, then the optical identification will not work anymore, because the scanners cannot see the difference of a barcode, because the contrast between white and black is so bad that you have no chance to read it.
Mm.
Of course, barcode is the cheaper solution, because a simple label without some electronic component on it, yes, of course, it is cheaper. But if you have one of the other problems in your production line or in your company, then RFID is the better solution.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Question is answered. So thank you very much.
Perfect. So then to summarize, we had the gate solutions as a stationary read point. We have the forklift as a moving read point. And it depends in the end on the use case that you have, on your specific problem, on your specific processes and your infrastructure that you have in your company. And in the end, it's all about discussing the items. And if we are involved in these kind of applications, we will consider all the challenges that you may have when you want to add RFID to your production site. And so in the end, I'd like to say thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much, Hendrik. And thank you for watching and participating in today's webinar. Thank you for the questions. We appreciate this very much. It should not be just a one-way street. So thank you again for this. And I will stop now the recording.